Well, good morning. Today I want to take you back to a very controversial period in American history, the Vietnam War. The war ended over 40 years ago. Today, many younger generations have little knowledge of this bitter conflict, but that's not the case for the men and women and their families who served during this long and costly engagement. This summer, residents of Upper Michigan will have an opportunity to remember and pay tribute to those who served and gave their lives. Today we'll talk with the people involved with that project. It all starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Now here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, starting in about the 1950s, United States foreign policy was guided by a strategy called the domino theory. It was during the Cold War with communism and the Soviet Union, and the theory held that a communist victory in one nation would lead to a chain reaction of communist takeovers in neighboring states. It was the domino theory that brought the United States into Vietnam to support the non-communist government in the South in their war with the communist North. The Vietnam War pitted the communist regime of North Vietnam and its southern allies, known as the Viet Cong, against South Vietnam and its principal ally, the United States. The war began after the rise to power of Ho Chi Minh and his Communist Vietnam Party in North Vietnam, and continued against the backdrop of an intense Cold War between the two global superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. More than 3 million people were killed in the Vietnam War. More than half were Vietnamese civilians. By 1969, at the peak of U.S. involvement in the war, more than 500,000 U.S. military personnel were involved in the Vietnam conflict. Growing opposition to the war in the United States led to bitter divisions among Americans, both before and after President Richard Nixon ordered the withdrawal of U.S. forces in 1973. In 1975, Communist forces seized control of Saigon, ending the Vietnam War, and the country was unified as the Socialist Republic of Vietnam the following year. By the time U.S. involvement in the war ended, more than 58,000 American troops had died. Joining us this morning to talk about Vietnam and plans for this summer to pay tribute to those who served and gave their lives are two people very deeply involved with a special event coming up next month in Marquette. Jim Provost is chairman of the Marquette County Veterans Alliance, and Will Weicker is the planner for this special event. We'll start off with Jim. Jim, good to have you with us.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here.
You know, we'll talk about Vietnam and about this event, but first of all, tell us about the Marquette County Veterans Alliance. What's this group about?
Several years back, I had tried to get together with a number of the different organizations to form into one group to try to get more done. Well, that came to fruition in 2014, excuse me, and we now have a good core group, because each of the different groups probably have 5, 6, 7, 8 men and women that do most of the work. So if you can get them all together, now we've got a good group to get more accomplished, and that was our goal. And that's happening. We're doing a lot of good things, and we're having a lot of success with it. We have members of the DAV, the American Legion, the 40 and 8, the VFW, the Vietnam Veterans of America, the AMVETS, the Marine Corps League, the Elks, and the Purple Heart Organization. And there's some civilians too.
Okay. Besides this project we're going to talk about, what other kinds of things does the Alliance do?
Well, we started out, our first project, we needed a new van. The DAV has a transportation van that takes takes the veterans from Marquette to the Iron Mountain Hospital for treatments. And they needed a new van, so that was our first goal. We raised enough money to get a new DAV van. And then our next project that we got into, of course, was we got involved with the Marquette County Board of Commissioners to get a Marquette County Department of Veterans Affairs formed. There was 83 counties in the state of Michigan, and Marquette was only one of the 3 that didn't have a Department of Veterans Affairs. So when working with them and that, we managed to raise enough a millage that's specific to the Veterans Department. And after that, then we got the reduced rate for the veterans for MarkTran that used the MarkTran system. So that, and then this next project, of course, is the Vietnam Wall thing that we're getting into.
You actually served in Vietnam, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I graduated from high school in 1965. 3 days later, I was in boot camp, Marine Corps boot camp. After boot camp, a little stint in Okinawa, and then off to Vietnam. And I left Vietnam in December of '66 and finished my 4 years in the Marine Corps back here in the States then.
I'm sure many people remember it, but many do not, many younger people. This was a very controversial period. Talk about that from the perspective of someone who actually served, and particularly when you came home.
Well, it was tough. We didn't know what to expect. We had heard different things when we were leaving Vietnam, and we left Vietnam in totally different ways than they did in World War II, and even now. We didn't come back as units. We came back individually. So when you were coming home, you were with guys you didn't even know. So that didn't help. And then the treatment was different. You know, I ran into a gentleman in the airport in Chicago that started on me calling me a warmonger and a killer and all this stuff. Well, that, you don't know how to react at first, you know. But later on, and it happened to all of us Vietnam veterans, we kind of shut down. We didn't want to deal with all that stuff. And so, hey, there was times I said I wasn't even in the military. And I'm ashamed of that. That's what I'm ashamed of, because you're not going to find a prouder Marine than me right now.
And truly, the Marines in Vietnam, or the servicemen in Vietnam, were no different than any other war. They were assigned to be there. They weren't making the policy.
Exactly.
They were carrying out the directions they had.
Exactly. We were in the service, and we were going to serve our country where they put us. So and our job became what it was, a wartime job, and you fought hard to survive. That's what you did.
And I assume this is one of the reasons why Vietnam veterans decided to form their own organization?
Yes, yes. And it's good because each war, the veterans can understand each other, what happened to them, where they were. And Vietnam veterans are no exception to that. We could talk about Vietnam together as Vietnam veterans. And you're going to have the same thing with the young veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. They're going to form their own groups. But that being said, they also have to get involved with the VFW and the AMVETS and the DAV and stuff, because those are the organizations that fight for the benefits for the veterans. So you have to have both in order to be successful. So
we're going to talk about some of the specific details with our next guest, but why is it important that this project go forward, the tribute to Vietnam veterans?
In my case in particular, I went to Washington, D.C. 3 different times before I was actually able to get to that wall and deal with it. It's a hard thing for Vietnam veterans, and I'm sure it is for all veterans with different things, but for some reason it was really hard to do. But now, after that happened, and we went, my wife and I went last year up to Quinnipiac and helped put this same wall up in Quinnipiac. They did it there last year. It's really something special, but what it really means to me is a chance for me to get together with Vietnam veterans and their families and my family to pay respect to our fallen comrades, and that's very important. It's a healing thing, and it brings us together closer, tighter, and that's what you want.
Okay, we've got to wrap it up. Congratulations for the good work you're doing in bringing the Alliance together, and we'll talk with Will coming up about some of the details about that visit.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate the time.
Good to have you with us, Jim. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. We're talking this morning about a special project coming up next month with the tribute wall for the Vietnam War Memorial. We're joined now by Will Weicker. Will is the planner on this event.
Yeah.
So let's find out a little bit about you. You're obviously too young to have been in the Vietnam War.
I am.
But I think you have some military background.
I do. Don, I recently retired in 2014 after 21 years as an officer in the Army, 26 years altogether with some enlisted time and some other things. But most recently I was the Chief of Operations for U.S. Army Africa and the Chief of Exercises for U.S. Army Japan. So that is significant for why I was chosen for this job.
Okay, and how did you get involved in this job?
Jim Provost asked me, because of my military background and previous experiences, to plan this event. And at the time, I said, that it's a great way for me to give back to the Vietnam veterans, because I was an Iraq War veteran, multiple tours there, 2006, 7, 8, and 9. And I knew that every time I came home from Iraq, we came home to cheering crowds and very welcoming arms of families and so on and so forth. And I knew that was because of the Vietnam veterans that made sure that we were taken care of coming back home. And taking on this project for me is a thank you to the Vietnam veterans for making sure we were taken care of.
Tell us, what is the Vietnam Wall? What can people expect to see when they show up to see this?
Yeah, so this is the AVTT, the Traveling Vietnam Wall. There's 6 traveling walls right now that go around the country. This is one of the biggest ones. It's an 80% replica. It's 360 feet long, so quite a large wall. Has all the same aspects as the wall in Washington, D.C. Has the reflection, the names. Along with that, we've got quite a few events planned as well, and a large setup. Setup is going to be just to the northeast side of the dome, back on the playing fields. Northern Michigan graciously allowed us to use their space, and going to be a large setup with a lot of folks helping out.
When you say 360 feet, just so people get the dimension, we're talking about longer than a football field.
Longer than a football field, and in fact the AVTT traveling wall is actually a little bit bigger, at least longer than the wall in Washington, D.C. About 8 feet versus 10 feet 1 inch, I think the wall in Washington, D.C. is. Ours is about 8 feet high in the center, and again 360 feet long.
Now, will this be available for people to see at any time?
Yes, and in fact, open viewing for the wall will start on the 23rd of June at approximately 3 o'clock or so in the afternoon, and it will be 24-hour viewing until 3 o'clock Sunday, the 26th of June, for 24-hour viewing, but main hours for the wall will be primarily daylight, 8 in the morning till about 10 at night.
And is there any kind of admission charge for people to come?
No admission, of course. There'll be lots of folks on site. We'll have the Escanaba Vets truck on site. We'll have a history tent on site that is being run by the Marquette Regional History Center. Be some great stuff to view in that tent. We'll have a large event tent on site, as well as some medical folks. We've got a small medical tent in case there's any issues on site, as well as a vets organization tent where people can just see and learn about the different vet organizations in Marquette County, as well as our surrounding counties.
Sounds like a lot of organizational work that has to go on to make this all work.
Yeah, Don, it's a really big event, and I think it's big enough that it would be really difficult for any one veterans organization to do, and that's why the Alliance is doing it, being able to pool those veterans organizations together for both manpower and expertise. Okay. We've got a lot of folks pitching in.
I know you have a lot of special events planned for this visit. We'll talk about those in just a minute. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. We're talking to Will Weicker, who is part of the project to bring the Traveling Vietnam Wall to Marquette next month. Well, let's talk about some of the special events you have, starting with you're going to have a special escort to bring the wall into town, is that correct?
We are. So along with the Vietnam Traveling Wall, we've got a whole series of themed days and events that are going on. And the first one, as you said, is the escort mission coming into town. That's going to happen on the 22nd of June. We're going to take the wall as it's coming into town. This is before it's set up. The truck and trailer comes into town with various motorcycle groups, Harley Riders group from town, the Patriot Riders, multiple other groups and individuals. Will have a large motorcycle processional in from out near Champion at Four Corners there, through Ishpeming, through Negaunee, down by the Jacobetti home for vets, and up 3rd Street down to the Dome area.
Okay. And Thursday, you've got the wall will be available for viewing and a special Native American.
Yeah, so 4 theme days. We wanted to, we've got 4 different ceremonies, so we wanted to make every ceremony a little different. So our 4 theme days, our first day is Native American Vets Day, and lots of Native Americans served in the military here in the UP, as well as a lot in Vietnam, and they've got a lot of folks that are coming to the wall. It's going to be specifically themed to them for drummers and dancers. They're going to smudge the wall and do some other things. And then that's also our opening ceremony on Thursday. Friday then, as you may know, we've got another ceremony going on. It's a history ceremony. It's our History Day. We've got a history ceremony going on, and then after the history ceremony, we've got a great event at the American Legion here in town. It's an all veterans event, so we invite all veterans. Again, if you're not a Vietnam veteran, we'd like to see all veterans in support of the Vietnam veterans there at the Legion on Friday night.
Just so we make sure we have time. I know it's very important on Saturday. There's a parade, a walk.
Yeah.
We really want people to turn out for that.
So Saturday's our big day. Saturday's our tribute day, tribute to the fallen, and we have first off in the morning at 10 o'clock in the Grave Verret school parking lot, a million-man march-style walk down 3rd Street where all the vets, along with Vietnam vets, all other vets are going to walk down 3rd Street towards the wall, finish up at the wall for our main tribute ceremony there starting at 11 o'clock down just north of the Dome.
And we'd love to see everybody turn out.
We'd love it, yeah.
Line the street.
It's going to be a great event. I think it's going to be one of the biggest veterans events ever in Marquette County. And possibly the UP, and we'll finish up down there at the Dome and kick off a really nice ceremony. Rain or shine, event tent is covered. So,
I know you also have a Facebook page if people are looking for more information.
We do, and we've got a Facebook page out there. It's MQT Traveling Tribute 2016. If they can go to that site, we've got posters up in town that are out there outlining all the events, and then we've also got a lot of people that we're trying to get to the event. Lots of volunteers needed, and we still need some volunteers for the event. It's coming up in June. So anybody who wants to contact us, and we're also still raising money and various different ways to be able to do that as well with us.
Donations are welcome, even though
donations are welcome. We're well on our way to getting what we need, but we're still short of our goal. So we're still asking for folks to donate. Again, going to be one of the biggest events Marquette County has ever seen. Certainly probably the biggest veterans event, and quite possibly the biggest veterans event ever in the UP.
Okay. Should be an outstanding event, and it's certainly well deserved for those men and women who served in Vietnam. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Back with some more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. Well, some of you may recall that I was the weatherman here at TV6 a long time ago. A lot has changed since then, and one major difference is the fact we actually have meteorologists presenting the reports today. Back then, the people handling that duty were recycled radio announcers like me. Most of us didn't have any particular weather predicting knowledge, but we could read the reports and oftentimes have fun with it. One thing that has not changed, however, is the weather itself. Obviously, it changes from day to day. But what doesn't change is the fact that it pretty much does what it wants to do, regardless of what we think the normal should be. And so here we sit on May 1st in a year that has really proved that point. I have to tell you that I've reached an age when I'm not a fan of winter. I know there are a lot of you who do enjoy the season, and I think that's great. It's only fair that we have some time each year for all of you who enjoy skiing and snowboarding, sledding and snowmobiling. The question is, how long is that period of time? And when does it happen? So having told you about my preferences, I can tell you that as we approached the end of last fall, I was excited because I was hoping that Old Man Winter might take it a little easier on us this year. That hope was based on solid meteorology. It was based on El Nino. The global weather experts were not only predicting El Nino, but a very big El Nino. I can almost picture myself sitting on a Lake Superior beach in January and enjoying it. Carl Bonack was here last fall and told us what El Nino is, so we won't go into that explanation again. The key thing to remember is that for us in this region, El Nino usually means a warmer, drier winter. So my excitement grew more intense when we made it into late December, and for most areas of upper Michigan, winter still hadn't really made an appearance. I'm thinking at that point, a couple of months of snow and cold, then El Nino will usher in an early spring in early March. And in a way it did, but it didn't stay around. As a matter of fact, we were teased with spring-like, at times almost approaching summer-like weather. But each time winter returned with a vengeance. There were at least a couple of times in Marquette at least, when the snow was almost gone, but then it came back. We don't know if we've seen the end of it yet, but among the things we do know is that the April just ended was the snowiest month of the winter and was right up near record-setting territory. So here we sit on May 1st, forsaken by El Nino. The snow is pretty much gone except for those parking lot piles, but the robins are huddling together to keep warm, and even the crocuses were reluctant to show their faces because of the cold. What happened to El Nino? I don't know. But it is spring in upper Michigan, and it's just the way we like it. Unpredictable and unexpected. It makes the mind alert, the senses sharp, it prepares us for anything, and it keeps us on our toes. But we do have to be careful about frostbite. I'll be back in 2 minutes. It's about time for us to wrap it up for another Sunday. Hope you will mark your calendar and plan to visit the Vietnam Wall display next month. It's an important tribute to the men and women who served this nation and made the ultimate sacrifice in a war that claimed the lives of many of our men and women. I would like to remind you that this show is also available on the internet. Just go to uppermichigansource.com, then click on the navigation icon, those three little bars near the upper left corner of the screen. From there, click on the Features tab, and you'll find the current and past episodes of The Ryan Report. Thanks for joining us this morning. The Today Show is up next. I hope we can look forward to seeing you again next Sunday morning.